So we're talking to Carl Hammington all the way from New Zealand on our podcast today. Carl is an exercise and fitness expert, and he's really a wealth of knowledge. I really like Carl as well as a person. We met him.
He's a lovely guy.
Yeah. Do you want to tell people where we met Carl?
Yeah, we met him at the Wellness Summit this year.
Yes.
And who is he working with that we know?
I don't know.
Sorry, I forgot. But anyway, he was there with somebody else that we know.
He's a podcaster on the network. Yeah.
But anyway, we got to know him a little bit at the Wellness Summit. He's just such a lovely guy, and really a really genuine human being. And we thought we would get him on here to talk about really real exercise, not the stuff that is not really what our bodies need, but the natural exercise that we all need. So that's where Fuad and I are really interested in that kind of movement that helps when you've been unwell and you need to heal, but you still want to exercise. So that's what we asked him to talk about. It was really interesting.
Yeah, because I think the wellness industry is really focused on that kind of shredded look, get your summer abs and I'm like,
in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm like, it's going to take me 25 years, man.
By then you'll be an old.
Yeah. So I don't want to get my summer abs. I just want to be fit and well and moving and just feeling energetic. And I want to be able to walk around and bend down without pain and not grow stiff as I get older. I want to increase my mobility, and this has sort of been the our approach to health anyway. With the way that we eat, it's not about crash diets and doing things that are not sustainable. It's about the long term with food and also the long term with exercise, and that's what we got Carl to talk about. So he has a really good perspective on it. I'll just read a little bit about Carl's bio. So Carl is the founder of BestMe, a functional. I love it. He capitalized fun and functional.
Yeah.
A functional movement coach and play advocate. He strongly believes that through attaining certain foundational movements and applying the principle of play, everyone will get the most out of life. He knows this as he's also a father and is constantly learning from his daughters. They are often seen playing in the garden, cooking together, or crawling around the backyard playing animals. This is so cool because this is, if you guys heard the Move Not podcast that I did as well when was it? A year ago or so.
Yeah.
That fits right in with that as well. But this is less, I guess, information heavy about specific stuff that MoveNet has. It's more for the general public. So I think you really, really enjoy this podcast. Carl's done a lot of study in exercise. So he's completed a bachelor degree in sport and exercise. He majored in exercise prescription. He has a diploma in exercise science through Massey University. He has continually upskilled himself with the mind practitioner training, CHEK studies. CHEK is Paul Chek's foundation. He's a really cool guy. He's been in the wellness industry for decades, and he's one of the, if not the most knowledgeable person on the topic of health that I know of. He's the most well-rounded human being that I know of. Paul Chek is incredible. So people who have done CHEK studies have usually been exposed to all this kind of world of Paul Chek, which is about sleep and movement and nature and exercise and all that kind of stuff. He puts it all together in a really neat package, and he goes really, really deeply into it. So people who've studied with him are great. So if you have a CHEK practitioner in your area, really worth looking into. He's also done the Dawn method, PTA Global, MBIT, and PH360. But Carl also is not very good with numbers, Joe.
Yes. He would like us to update you all on a certain part of the podcast. You can explain, Fuad.
Well, he was talking about epigenetics and exercise, and there was an effect that he was talking about. I don't know how much he quoted. Was it 15,000 something? What did he say? I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah. But the number should have been 300, and he was way off the number that he was quoting. So just to let you guys know that it's 300. When you hear him quote an epigenetic and exercise effect, replace the figure that he gave you with 300. And you can work with Carl online. He'll give the details during the podcast. We'll also put some stuff up on the show notes. But have a listen to the podcast, and we'll see you guys on the other side.
Yay!
Carl, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming, bro.
I'm very glad to be here, and thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, we're so happy. Like, we met you at the Wellness Summit earlier this year, and you had like one of the biggest smiles there. So you were hard to miss. We thought, seeing how we hardly ever talk about exercise on this podcast, and the importance of something like that in wellness can't really be disregarded. Just needed to have you on the podcast to basically share the wealth of information you have on this topic. But before we get into these questions, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're based, what kind of work you do?
Yeah. So I'm basically, first and foremost, I guess I'm a father of two beautiful little daughters.
Oh.
And it's obviously guided my journey a lot, and it's one of the reasons I do what I do, or the way I change route anyway. I'm also I'm the creator of BestMe Radio, a little project I have, which is a sort of immersion-based learning project. And then I'm Academic Director and part owner of HealthFit Collective, which is an integrative gym based in Wellington, which has all sorts of different disciplines and whatnot under one roof. So that's me in a nutshell. Obviously, there's been a lot that's happened leading up into this point, but I don't know how far you want to get into depth.
No, that's really good. I guess, guys, that's kind of in a nutshell. If you got nut allergies, please stay away. Keep your distance.
I think people are allergic to me, actually.
I don't see how, man. You're such an awesome guy. But one of the things that Joe and I often talk about here is we want to figure out for ourselves and for our communities what the best way to exercise is. Because what we see quite often in the fitness world is this idea that's all about, building muscle, getting speed, gains in your ability to lift and getting shredded and things like that. And really, for people like me and Joe, it's such a far-fetched goal from where we're at that we really don't know where to start. And what actually, it's not even a goal that we want at all for ourselves. We want to be able to age gracefully and to support the body's healing mechanism with exercise, and to be able to be resilient as we grow older. And there doesn't seem to be much focus in the wellness world around that topic, and we thought we'd bring you in to talk about this. So maybe can you give us a little bit of a differentiation between the various types of exercise, the one like what the mainstream is telling us that we should be doing, and the one that I just mentioned here? Do they actually meet? Is there only room for one, or am I dreaming that the goals that I have are something that can be achieved?
No, I think that's a great point, and all of those are great points. And that's the exact reason why we created HealthFit Collective, actually, is to try and redefine what a gym was, because we noticed exactly the same things. And as you know, I shared my journey with you guys at the Wellness Summit. But I had gone down that track of actually striving to be bigger and ripped, and I got into really good shape, and I ended up winning multiple bodybuilding competitions, actually. And I think I labelled myself the dreadlocked Oompa Loompa or something like that.
You'll have to explain.
Carl, how tall are you, just so that
I was a little bit too tall to qualify as a hobbit. I don't know what box to put me in, so I guess I found myself at this point, and I was bigger and leaner, and I probably looked what some might describe as healthy from the outside, but I wasn't very happy. I wasn't able to do the things I really loved, which was to, just be able to trust my body in any environment. I want to go and play outside, throw a ball around, kick a ball around, climb a tree, go bushwalking, play touch rugby. Just being able to react and do whatever I want to be able to do. And I found myself being limited, in those things that I love. And I was like, well, there's something wrong here. It's really easy to get swept up in that in the gym industry as well. So I sort of went back and took a step back and started to think about, okay, what is the human body designed to do? So this obviously opened up a whole can of worms, so obviously sorting through them. But, I've developed some principles around that called my foundational movement principles that every human should and could be able to do, and that's not necessarily performance based at all. One of the biggest things I think is there's a huge misconception. I think we're becoming, in terms of the fitness industry, a little bit more disconnected with what it is to be human. So, you go to a gym because you're told that you should. You're told that you should do exercise. So straight away, that's going to be seen as a form of punishment. You do it. It's horrible at the time. You feel a little bit better afterwards. You get that endorphin rush, which is great. Most people go into these gyms, they plug their headphones in, they socially isolate themselves as well. You jump on a linear machine, you do these movements that humans aren't even designed to do. You might be upside down, pushing your weight above your head, or doing crunches on the ground, all these ridiculous exercises. Anyway, no judgment to anyone who does that, by the way. So I decided to deconstruct, that whole paradigm, I guess, which is what led me to creating HealthFit, which is a functional movement gym that meet people where they're at. We try and create a healthy relationship with movement and the human body. And we also make it a really big point that, movement is only one component of a well-functioning human. And there's so many variables to consider. I think that's really important to note as well. So, I think you can, become muscular and lean and look good, but I think it's more, it should be ideally a side effect of healthy living as opposed to the objective, because that reverse engineering approach can create all sorts of issues, mental and physical as well.
That's a good point.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
So then what does a normal person who has a normal life that's not fitness focused look for then in terms of what their goals around fitness should be? Yeah,
that's going to be highly individual. I guess, first of all, you want to think about what you want to do in life. And I can almost guarantee you there will be a movement component to it. Even if your goal in life is to be a high achiever in your workplace, we know now that by exercising or moving on a regular basis, that can increase cognitive function. You can increase things like BDNF, neurotrophic factor, which literally just helps upregulate your brain, makes you feel better. We know by doing functional movements like climbing a tree or getting in bare feet and moving, we know that increases working memory. So it can literally help you recall information a lot better. Yeah. So your goal is going to be highly, individualized, but it doesn't have to be a goal around looking good. It could be anything you want, and the way that you go about that ideally would have some sort of movement component. One of the first places to start, I think, for a lot of people, maybe to challenge your listeners right now, is to ask yourself, what is your favorite form of movement, or when was the last time you really enjoyed doing something that had a movement component? So trying to find your flavor, or find, what you enjoy to create that good relationship with movement again.
Mm. Yeah.
So you're talking about from perspective of someone who is trying to go back maybe from a sedentary lifestyle into enjoying movement in some kind of activity. Is that sort of the question that you have?
Yes. Yeah. So it might be if it's really sedentary and it's starting at square one, then obviously you want to be looking for opportunities to move. It might be as simple as taking one stop back from the bus and walking a little bit further every day. It might be just trying progressively to walk more flights of stairs at your workplace or at home. It might be standing and sitting out of your seat 6 times every time you go to get up.
Ooh. Out. It's a good idea.
Yeah, I guess it depends on where the level of the person is as well. Sometimes it's just as simple as just getting people moving. And having a buddy Having a guide can really help with that too, because that's where you can make it a little bit more of an enjoyable experience, and you can also have that accountability factor as well.
So do you I'm just curious, I'm not really sure how your fitness thing business works, but do you do all that kind of thing, the buddy type stuff, the guide on for people online?
Yep. Okay. So we do a lot of wellness coaching online as well.
Right.
So and we go about breaking down, goals, the why behind the goals, and then, creating an individualized plan to help you get there. And obviously one component of it is movement.
Yeah.
It's a very important part of it, obviously.
So in terms of goals, can you give us an example maybe for somebody that's come to you and they've come from a typically, westernized approach to movement? So like I said, sedentary office worker or someone who's at home who mostly their movement is around housekeeping or something like that. What kind of movement goals can emerge for somebody like that?
Who else talking about me? Hypothetically, asking for a friend.
Good old friend. Obviously, once again, I don't like to set goals for people. I think it's important that you ask the questions to get the goals out of them. But a simple one, I think sometimes it is important to have a tangible goal at first. So once you find the primary goal and the whys behind it, they say, well, ask why 6 times, and then you really find the emotive connection. But once you know what they really want in life, and then you can go about taking away at it, and you can put some measurable steps in place. And I've seen people achieve some pretty incredible things in a very, very, relatively short period of time. I mean, one of my friends and clients, Mel, he had a concrete wall collapse on top of him, and he broke his spine in 3 places and ended up nearly paraplegic. And he set a goal after he found out they could basically save his spinal cord. He set a goal of running a marathon 1 year later.
Wow.
And he did it, which is incredible.
That is incredible.
If he can do that, a year after, nearly losing his movement completely, then, anything is achievable. And I really have seen some pretty incredible things. But a lot of it comes down to the mindset around movement as opposed to just the movement itself.
So what's a healthy mindset around it then?
I think first of all, we need to change the paradigm around exercise, and maybe change the language around it as well. Maybe turn it into more a movement perspective. And as I talked about in the Wellness Summit, it's I think we need to fall in love with movement again, and just really realize its potential on how it can impact in our lives in such a positive way. I don't know about you guys, but one of the things that keeps me moving and keeps me wanting to move is, I want to be around for my daughters for a start.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be sort of one of those. I just have to tell you this little story. My father-in-law had an early retirement at 40, and all he did after that was sit around and watch TV. And he's honestly, by 80-something, he's just about to go into a nursing home, and it's so sad. And I just think, my husband's so determined not to end up that way, and I get a bit slack with exercise, but when I think of that, I think, I just want to be active right to the end. So important.
Yeah, no, I can't agree more. I think, to me anyway, part of being a free human is to have that ability to move and not be limited by a movement. I never want to go traveling and have to sacrifice a really awesome experience just because I can't walk up a hill.
Can't climb, yeah.
And the other part to that is actually, I think you can really inspire kids through movements as well.
Yeah.
So we were living just around the corner in a little place in Mount Victoria, and we had a fig tree right outside of our house. And I don't know how legal this is, but it was on public land. There was always these beautiful ripe figs up the top, and no one was harvesting it. They were just dropping on the ground and going to waste. I decided to climb up it, my 6-year-old daughter down below with her bag, and she was catching the figs as I climbed up the top, and I pulled them off and dropped them down. And it's just something that she's remembered, and she often references. Remember that time you climbed up that tree, Dad?
I'd like I just want to focus in on what you said and say shifting the maybe the language and the ideas from exercise to movement, because exercise is by default like it's saying that you're exercising to maybe reach a certain goal, and that it's some kind of chore that you need to do, whereas movement has a very different kind of connotation. So movement is naturally what we should be able to do. Movement is our birthright in a way, and through the sedentary lifestyle, or being working in offices and sitting in chairs and being in cars all the time, we've lost this natural ability to move. And what you're saying here is that like the shift should be around restoring movement and then improving movement to a place where activities can be done in a way that's not burdening for us, like everyday activities or even activities that we enjoy doing that are outdoors or sports driven or whatever it is, like climbing a tree, should then become something simple again for us through movement-based exercises.
Yeah, I think obviously there's a performance layer in there as well. If that's something that's is one of your goals, like if you want to be an elite athlete, obviously there's going to be some hard work, but it's going to be pleasurable because you're going to be achieving those goals. You're going to be doing the thing that makes you feel free and happy. I think there's that layer as well. But it's multifactorial. But I think if we can integrate movement back into our lives, as opposed to seeing it as something completely separate, I think that's a really good start.
Are there foundational movement patterns that you can talk to us about that a human being should be able to do? Such because we're bipedal and we've got hands, and what can we do with this body?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're pretty lucky, right? We're probably the most diverse, or we are the most diverse movers on the planet. It doesn't mean we're the best at everything, but we're very well-rounded. So, we can do, we're designed to push, pull, rotate, pick up, squat, manipulate load, brachiate, which is swinging and climbing, swing, swim, jump, dance. We can do it all, and we can do it in every plane of motion as well. We can still crawl like other animals. We can do it in a 3-dimensional environment. We can, we can create really unique motor patterns that other animals or other beings on this planet can't do. So we've got a pretty awesome opportunity, and we've got a pretty incredible base physiology to work from, I believe, anyway. So some of the things I believe that all humans should be able to do. I think the most foundational movement of all is just proper breath, just to actually be able to use your diaphragm and breathe properly. That's, to me, it's kind of interesting that we're, the most functional movement of all. People are having to take courses in now. Breathe properly. But obviously there's cause and effect. So they say that, if your rib angle drops by about 20 degrees and your diaphragm function shuts down and your secondary breathing muscles take over. So
is that to do with the way you're sitting? And
exactly. At the moment, I'm sort of hunched over the computer a little bit, which isn't ideal, but I'll make up for it. So, breath is one of the most foundational. And then things like actually getting in bare feet and connecting with the earth. Our feet are pretty intense little pieces of software. So, we've got about a quarter of the joints in our body are in our feet. We've got just as many neural connections as we do in our hands. So they're very, very sensory based. And they have a direct correlation with other parts of our physiology. So just by getting in bare feet and allowing them to move properly versus locking them up in what I call foot lockers, which are tight shoes, can actually have huge physiological benefits on our body. Another one is just the flat foot deep squat. So the ability to sit comfortably with your heels on the ground in a deep squat position. that is a natural human resting position. It's also a position that, obviously humans, not many in the Western world now, it used to go to the toilet in. So it's a position that as a human, I think we should be able to do. Obviously through the invention of chairs, that sort of, that takes a little bit of that ability away, unfortunately, but it's a movement we can bring back as well.
Why is it that some people find it so difficult and some don't? Is it just because they've sat so much? I don't know, because I've always found it really easy to squat, and others I know find it very difficult.
Yeah, there's a few things. I think, there's the whole use it or lose it principle. Yeah. So if you haven't done it in a long time, then there's some postural adaptation that happens. Mm-hmm. So your muscles and joints basically adapt to the most common positions that they spend time in. So if you come across any of Katie Bowman's work, for example, and Move Your DNA, we know that postures, pressures, and every single movement has an effect right down to the DNA level. So we become very fast. Yeah. So it has a really strong epigenetic effect.
Oh.
So obviously,
never even thought of epigenetics with movement.
Yeah, no, it's pretty fascinating actually.
Yeah,
looking at 15 minutes of movement can have about a 15,000. Don't put me on this. Changes about 15,000 genetic interactions in the body for about an hour. So I'll have to find the exact statistics on that anyway, but it can have a really, really strong effect on many genes and bacterial genes as well. So yeah, that's it's pretty interesting. And then I think there's obviously there are other issues. So there's certain genetic things around joints. So hip structures can be different in many people. So you can have what's called anteverted and retroverted hips, where some people's hips rotate in a little bit and some people's rotate out a little bit further, which is going to make it a little bit easier to get into that deep squat.
Yeah.
Where you place your feet can have a big influence on that. And then, so high heels actually can have a very restricting element through the hips as well. That will change the whole way your hips are loaded. Yeah. So just by having a lack of mobility through those ankles will change everything from the feet, unfortunately. I think that's most of the contributors to the deep squat. And it can take a long time to get back, like years, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I guess I grew up mostly in bare feet.
Well, some of us are a bit lower to the ground as well.
What was that? Sorry?
Some of us are a bit lower to the ground as well.
That's true.
Yeah, I've got a way to travel. My ears block when I squat. It's very pressure. But Carl, I'll give you, for instance, my story. So I used to be quite overweight at 128 kilos, and I have flat feet, and movement was always a really big, difficult thing for me because I had to move that kind of weight around. And I also had a lot of inflammation in my body, so that was really problematic in the foundational years for me. I also had asthma and things like that, so I couldn't run. And it wasn't until 31 when I started eating a whole food diet that things started improving for me. Yeah. I never had those foundations in place for good movement patterns. And what sort of stops me from exercising is body pain. So I have this chronic pain that's with me. I still haven't been able to overcome fully all the challenges that I've had. One of the lingering things is this body pain in my back and in my fascia. And when I do something like running, I wake up the next day and I'm so stiff I can't even move. My neck my body gets inflamed from that kind of impact-based exercise. And what I started doing is I live in the Blue Mountains, so there's no functional gyms where I am. In fact, when I went to a CrossFit gym, I pushed myself into severe adrenal fatigue, and I was for 4 months. But going back to the gym now, I'm feeling energetic and well to the point where I can start moving again.
Right.
I want some resistance training. So I'm going to the gym. I'm not really pushing it heavy with the weights or anything like that. Just trying to get the muscles to have some resistance against them and to move, in various planes. And I don't like the fact that I'm in a gym. I feel like I'm a rat on a wheel. That's sort of like in terms of my.
It has its place. Yeah.
Sorry. Yes. So like my feeling is like ideally I would love to be able to have all my movement requirements met by my lifestyle through being more outdoors, but that can't be facilitated for me. So I have to go to the gym.
Totally.
To do these kinds of things, but I'm not sure whether what I'm doing is the right thing. So maybe I'd like to know from you, for someone who's sort of recovering from illness, and I don't have athletic goals. What I want to have is I want to oxygenate my tissues. I want to get my blood flowing, and I want to improve mobility. I want to maintain and increase strength as I age. I don't have immediate goals of strength gains, but I have long-term ability to maintain my strength as I grow older. So can you talk to us a bit about how a person like me would go about?
Yes. So I probably didn't explain enough before, but I think the gym definitely has its place. By the way, it's a potential training ground, for life or for getting it back into your life again. Where to start is it's once again it can be individual, but one thing that's often not taken into account is, you guys have probably talked about this many times, but autonomic nervous system function. So, we know that, with just a quick brief, so we've got the autonomic nervous system, which is a branch of our nervous system that's responsible for what we used to think was involuntary functions in the body. We've got two arms of that, which is, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is otherwise known as, your resting. And then you've got your sympathetic nervous system, which is like your fight and flight mode. And what we know is if you're operating too much in fight and flight mode, you're going to be quite inflammatory if you have your foot on the accelerator too much. So one of the worst things you could be doing in that adrenally fatigued state or the sympathetic nervous system state is go into a CrossFit workout. It's going to send you straight back into adrenal overload, and it's going to lead you to crash. So I break that down into, actually I'd borrow this term off Paul Chek, and that is working in versus working out. So there's certain movements or forms of movement that he calls working in, which are basically movements that give you energy. So things that involve a lot of breath and flow. The general gauge for working in is you should be able to hold conversation. Things like
while exercising, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. So while exercising, your yoga, might be like your animal flow. You might do some multi-directional movement patterns, but with a breathing element to it. Versus a workout, which is what we classically know as a gym workout, which is either lifting really, really heavy weights, doing your high-intensity interval training, or your CrossFit style workout, which has its place as well if you're in a homeostatic state, I guess. So a good place to start is to work.
Homeostatic for listeners is when you're balanced. You're not pushed into fight or flight. You're in a rested, healthy state. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you're reasonably well balanced. But if you're bouncing back from illness or adrenal fatigue, I'd say you want to be doing more working in versus working out. Yeah. In saying that, there is some research showing that resistance training, for example, which you're doing a bit of at the moment, is really good for lowering inflammatory markers. So it can have a positive effect on lowering inflammation. And starting, and it actually can have some immune boosting effects as well.
Okay.
But I suspect that, the way it's been conducted is it's a reasonably low level. That doesn't mean doing a massive 2-hour, bodybuilding style thrashing. That'll be more, doing some reasonably light full range of motion, resistance exercise. It sounds like you're probably doing quite.
Yeah, that's sort of where I've come to just recently, because I have whenever I try to exercise in the ways that, say, gym instructors have always told me, I found myself in the beginning getting energized, but then crashing very quickly and having that kind of inflammation come back very, very quickly. Yeah. I'm trying to avoid repeating the same mistake by sort of going more slowly, just giving, I'm feeling that these exercises that I'm doing for my muscles now, they're not there to really deplete them so that they can, go through very strong hormesis, where it's more about giving them a form of nourishment, because if Katie Bowman talks about it, you've mentioned her earlier, that exercise is in her view is a form of nourishment for the body. So a bicep is nourished by its movement, and so are the triceps, and and through the resistance that these muscles encounter, and it need not be geared towards heavy weights or heavy for what you can carry. Yeah. So I'm not challenging my body. I'm just giving it basically the weights that it can carry, but just giving it that kind of movement. Does that sound like a good approach?
Yeah, exactly. And we've got a little tool here in the gym as well. And I think it's really important to recognize yourself, and for me as a movement specialist as well, to recognize in my clients that everyone is different from day to day as well.
Yes.
So we've got a little questionnaire. Well, we ask questions as well to our clients, and that's, okay, first of all, have you had at least 6 hours sleep? Mm-hmm. Are you well hydrated today? Are you well nourished food-wise today? Are you feeling inflammatory? Have you had any emotionally challenging events over the last couple of days? That autonomic nervous system again, and your levels of inflammation. So it's really important to consider where you're at on that day. And I suspect if you answered, negatively to some of those questions, then I'll just back off a little bit and, move still, but move lightly. Maybe just do some body weight exercises that day. And if you're feeling really good, you've ticked yes to all of those questions, then that's an indication you might be able to push a little bit harder. And then also note how you feel afterwards, 1 to 3 hours afterwards. If you're feeling good still, that's a good sign. And then note how you feel the next day as well. Are you feeling better, worse, or about the same? So those can give you an indication as to how hard you should be pushing as well.
That's really interesting.
And a daily movement regimen like that, you think is needed? Because, people sometimes do gym work or movement work, say, 3 times a week. What's your view on that?
Yeah, no, I think with a few things, we're obviously, they have that push for 30 minutes a day, but, as humans, we're designed to move for the majority of the day. I'd say, like Katie Bowman says as well, get a well-balanced movement diet into your life. So don't do the same things over and over again. Look to, if you've got a trainer, ask for them to set you up with some different routines perhaps. Look at the different elements of movement, because there's so many. There's strength training as part of it. You've got some mobility work. You can do linear loaded stuff, which is more machine-based work, or you can do dimensional loaded work as well. Mm-hmm. You might want to get a play element into your routine at some stage, like literally throw a ball around or play some games. It has a whole lot of positive endocrine responses as well, which is good for us. You might want to challenge your metabolic systems, so maybe a cardiovascular, only if you're feeling like your system's up to it, because cardiovascular training can be a little bit immune suppressing, especially for longer duration. So I'd be a little bit cautious of pushing too hard in terms of your endurance work. And then looking at, if you want to have it, this is a little bit more technical, but looking at the different movement patterns, as I said before, you've got gait, which is, you've got push, you've got pull, you've got rotation. Are you picking things up? Are you squatting? Are you practicing your hanging or your brachiating? You're climbing? All of these things are things worth considering as well. So ask yourself if you're getting a well-balanced movement diet. Try not to do the same thing over and over again, because what do they say? If nothing changes, nothing changes. So, and then add that progressive load in. So just slowly increase that intensity. Just allow your system to have the ability to adapt.
I've got a few questions about, just say you're recovering from surgery or childbirth or something like that. What's the best kinds of exercise to start with?
Yeah, I mean, surgery would depend on
what surgery it is, I suppose. Well, I had a hysterectomy at the start of the year, and it set me back so far with all my exercise. And I found that when I did start to try and exercise again, just 10 minutes of running up and down stairs, even 5 minutes, I was so dead. One day it made me crash for 24 hours. I was in bed for 24 hours. So obviously adrenal fatigue was part of my problem. And I have come further along since then. That was a couple of months ago. But it's still kind of like I'm still hesitant to push myself too far. And I know when I first had the surgery, it was 6 weeks afterwards, they say you can exercise again. And I sort of started doing a bit, but I just wasn't ready. And and I think it's the same with, women who have a baby or something like that. It's difficult to know how much is good for your body. Like where do you push to?
There's a couple of things to note there. You've got by the way, I'm not talking rubbish. I just let your listeners know as well. I do clinical rehab work as well.
Awesome.
So I do a little bit of work with sports doctors and physios. So I learn a lot from them all the time. But with local inflammation, so where you have the surgery, you'll get something. You may get something called neural inhibition, which means it literally will shut down a lot of the muscles around that area. And so quite often it can be as simple as getting some isometric work in. So say if you've had something around childbirth or hysterectomy, you might even just start with trying to gently reconnect with your pelvic floor muscles or your transverse abdominis, which is that muscle that draws your belly button in towards your spine.
Right.
Or getting a breathing pattern.
You do that I usually do Pilates. That's my main exercise. Cool. But even that I pulled back from because I wasn't sure. But that exercise you're talking about, pulling the belly button in, that's one of the first ones you work on with the Pilates.
So, you could think stop wheeze, just to get part of your pelvic floor working again. And just holds and drawing that belly button in, especially when you're going from sitting to standing or standing over and getting up, just to give you a little bit of stability around the pelvis. Be useful. So I mean, God, that's those things are big stressors on the body.
Yeah, so, I figured that out the hard way.
Yeah, I can relate. But that's where I always look at. Okay, what are the other elements of wellness? What can I control? And obviously you've got a lot of the things right with your nutrition and hydration. How are your sleep patterns? How's your mindset? Are you doing meditation to calm that nervous system and put you into a healing space? You look at those other ways.
Avoiding screens late at night.
Yeah, exactly. That blue light.
I'm trying to.
Yeah, it's hard. Netflix is calling.
I don't know.
Yeah, so what other controllables can you control? Because I think it's going to be more important than ever that you get those things right. If you can't move for a period of time and your body's not ready for it, then
you work on all those other things as well.
Yeah. But usually there's something you can do, whether it's isometric work, whether it's even doing some movement away from the site. So, if you can,
arms or whatever.
Yeah, because, you're going to get that endocrine response, So, for example, one of my mentors actually he did his PhD and he studied breast cancer and resistance training. And he had a lot of post-breast cancer patients doing resistance training on other parts of their body, and it found that it had a really positive systemic effect on them.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so with the inflammatory markers especially, it was really, really beneficial.
So it was a system-wide, like it wasn't isolated to the area where they were exercising, the whole system benefited from it.
Yeah, so not just, there will be local benefit as well. But it actually had an effect on the entire system. So, just because, one limb might be taken out, for example, you might have a broken ankle, doesn't mean you can't work on your fitness. You just have to change the way you do it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of other tools that you can use to keep that going.
Yeah.
You mentioned some like animal flow earlier, and like these types of movement practices are starting. Like there's all sorts of people, all sorts of programs now out there saying, this kind of program will help you create this type of natural movement. Can you name a few programs that you like? Do you have any yourself that are geared towards that kind of natural movement that allows people to increase their mobility and strength at home without having to sort of go to the gym?
Yeah, and those things don't have to be mutually exclusive as well, which is why I like some of the more integrated approaches, I guess. So yeah, some of the ones I really enjoy, Animal Flow is one of them. I really enjoy that program. You've got Daryl Edwards and Primal Play, which I love his work. Which is connecting with primal movements, but also adds that really strong play element to it. I think that's cool. It's got a funny sound to it. You've got MoveNat, which I really like. I haven't actually done the qualification, but I've read up a lot on that.
We've interviewed him, haven't we? Yeah.
I did a MoveNat course for the general public.
Oh, brilliant!
Yeah, it was really great. Yeah, really good. Like my problem with it is there was no sort of something to take home with me. Like I didn't feel like there was some. Like I did it there. I did the class, but I would have really liked some kind of follow up afterwards that says, get into this kind of thing. Let's, like something that is gonna guide you to integrate these things back at home.
Yeah, 100%. These programs all have their positives and negative side effects. Like MoveNet is amazing because it reconnects you with being human. But you're right, it is generally, from what I understand, a little bit less structured. Animal Flow has got a little bit more structure to it, but it's quite different again. It's mostly ground-based stuff. So you don't do a lot of actually standing on your feet, which is obviously how we want to operate. Mm-hmm. And then Primal Play has a very strong play element to it. It's just a little bit less prescriptive again. So these can be fun, but they're a little bit looser. And I'm probably a little bit like you as well, Fuad. I quite like to have a progressive plan.
I do too.
Yeah, so I quite like to have, I take elements of these and my own sort of ideas around movement, and I'll work on the foundations, and then I'll progress them when that individual is ready. And you can take it in 1,000 different ways. You're only really limited by your imagination, really.
Yeah, wonderful. So maybe one thing around people with autoimmune diseases and the kind of exercise they can do, because I'm not sure really what the science says about how exercise triggers the immune system. And I know a lot of people with autoimmune diseases, when they exercise, it actually increases their pain or their inflammation. Do you know anything about that?
Well, interesting. I did do a review on this in the Low Carb podcast, I think it was recently, and I did some paper reviews, and one of them was on the link between it was exercise and the microbiome. And I stumbled across a whole lot of research on how actually they've only studied it in sort of very measurable linear cardiovascular exercise, and how it can actually have a very positive effect on the human microbiome. And also, in particular, it had a really positive effect on actually healing and sealing the gut wall.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I know you guys have talked about the gut health link and with autoimmunity. So I thought that was quite interesting. But then you've got, the reduced inflammatory markers through resistance training as well, that we know in terms of research. But, the things that haven't been researched are, how, the 3D movement, or how actually, getting in bare feet and, practicing some basic human movements. That's really hard to measure. So I don't know what sort of effect that has on autoimmunity or inflammatory markers or anything like that. So yeah, I think that, going about it in the same way as what we talked about before, what are those ends? In terms of autoimmunity, what are the controllables we can control? I think it's really important to note. And then gauging the type and the intensity of the exercise based on how that individual is at that day. In saying that, I've also noticed I've had some people with chronic fatigue and probably adrenal fatigue as well, that the energy levels were constantly low, and it was obviously probably at that complete exhaustion phase. And just by actually having a basic discipline of coming in daily and really struggling, even though the exercise wasn't particularly intense, has actually pulled them out of that fatigue state. So I think that's
interesting.
Yeah, it's really hard to gauge on when to push and when to back off, but I think having a practice is really important.
So you think maybe it could be beneficial for people with adrenal fatigue and chronic fatigue to have a small, regular schedule?
Yeah, I think so.
And just slowly build on that. And because sometimes people say with adrenal fatigue, I guess it depends how bad you are.
Yeah.
But sometimes they say no movement at all until you pull out of it a bit more.
Yeah.
But I just wasn't sure about that.
Yeah, well, I think if it's complete exhaustion phase, you're not going to have much at all. And
that's true.
It could kick you back into, if you go into like a CrossFit workout, it'll kick you back.
Oh, no, of course, no.
Yeah. But, we see these positive effects from those less intense movement practice.
Can you give some examples of what kind of movement? Yeah,
so starting with, your Tai Chi or yoga, some restorative yoga can be really useful to start. That's, has a positive effect on the autonomic nervous system, getting you back into that rest and digest mode. So that can be a really good place to start. Just as simple as going for a daily walk in the sunshine as well, because it obviously nourishes us on many levels. And probably where you are, you're going to get a lot more sunshine than where you are.
Until the wet season.
Then it's 26 degrees and wet instead, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
So starting slow, having a mindful element to it, and just making that progression very, very small, noting how you feel before and after. Some other styles might be progress someone into some basic calisthenics work, so some basic body weight exercises, as simple as body weight squats in and out of a chair, practicing a basic crawl pattern, a static hanging from a bar, just things that challenge the system and challenge your connective tissues and your joints and your muscles in simple but effective ways. Can be really useful as well.
Well, that's good to know. Thanks.
So, Carl, tell us, how can someone work with you, and what kind of programs do you offer for, our audience is mainly Australian. We do have some people in New Zealand, but maybe you can tell us about your online offerings first.
Yeah. So we do a range of different things. So we do online coaching, in which we set up exercise regimes and wellness plans. We do epigenetic testing and coaching as well. So we look at people's genetic profiles and what life has done to them up until this point. And we do coaching around that, and that involves everything from movement, nutrition, social environments, mindset, psychology, your circadian rhythms that are suited to your body. There's a whole lot of different elements to that. That's probably a whole podcast in itself. We do that via Skype or Zoom as well. So we run regular workshops and we record them as well. So if people wanted to tune in, you can find them at HealthFit Collective. .co.nz, and you'll find some of our online content. Every week we post a little 1 to 5 minute little snippet video, and it might be an exercise or a little wellness tip or even a discussion point every single week. So that's just a free little tidbit of information every week for our
on Facebook.
That's through our website. Okay. So subscribers get sent them. But we do little bits and pieces on Facebook as well. I'm regularly posting on my my Instagram, sort of a bit more about the behind the scenes stuff. So I think, like you two, actually, I'm into my my foraging and get out in the wild quite a lot, and so you get a little insight as to what I do in terms of my movement and wellness practice. Yeah,
what's your Instagram?
Instagram is BestMe Community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And where's your gym based, Carl?
It is right on the waterfront in Wellington, actually. So we're on a wharf that juts out into the Wellington Harbour. So
nice.
We're pretty lucky.
Yeah,
Yes.
lovely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I did a little wharf jump yesterday, actually, in the cold weather, and it was quite invigorating.
Sounds good. So it's like my kind of thing.
Yeah.
Another way to get your mitochondria working well, eh?
Yeah, that's right. Cold exposure, and I love it. It's been such a cool thing for me to get cold adapted again this winter, and a lot of people think I'm crazy, but I've just had such benefit. And
well, he is crazy, but it's also been
I think a little bit of crazy is good, isn't it?
I think we're all crazy, like in
our own way.
Yeah, I think so. But hey, Carl, this was really great. I think a really good introduction for people to sort of get to know where they can start if they're sick, if they're not feeling great, and they haven't really been exercising for a while. There's really good tips here for us. Thank you so much. But I think we'd love to have you again, maybe for some listener questions, maybe sometime this year if we can manage it. It would be awesome. Love hearing you talk, and really thank you so much for being on the show again with us.
Absolute pleasure, guys, and this has been really fun. And thanks for sharing a little bit of your story with me as well. I feel really honoured. Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.